Never reinforce the right side of this bathroom wall on Cafe and Rainbow Six Siege. If you put a reinforcement on the right with head holes on the left, you give the attackers a huge angle onto anyone using the vaultable rotate right here. And you don't want to be doing this. Instead, put the reinforcement on the left with head holes all along the right. It's much safer and you can use the rotate from actual cover just like this. Reinforcing incorrectly in general can waste a lot of time and even lose you games, which is why you should never reinforce next to your teammates. This makes it to where people have to take more time traveling to different walls to get all 10 reinforcements down, which wouldn't have been necessary had you just split up in the first place. Splitting up is good in this case, but on attack you never want to split up from your team. This is because you want to be able to refrag your teammates and play off of their pushes and utility as much as possible. In an increasingly aggressive meta where people just run in, staying with them and at worst flat out baiting them isn't a terrible idea. Baiting in general isn't a bad idea, though as long as you're up in man count. You never want to be baiting if you're down in man count, unless you're in a 1vx on attack. This is due to the fact that if you don't be aggressive and even up the man count, they will swarm you all at once, making you have to take the impossible task of taking on a 1v3 simultaneously. You never really want to be taking multiple people on at once though. Which is why my next tip is that you need to isolate your 1v1s. You can never expose yourself to more than one angle at a time, even if you don't know if an enemy is there or not, due to the fact that it can get you shot in the back a lot of the time. If you notice that you have a problem getting shot in the back a lot of the time, it's due to the fact that you're just positioning badly. Shooting someone in the back though and surrounding them is the most reliable way that you can counter a shield operator, and it's something that you aren't doing correctly. If you want to do this to its fullest potential, you have to get actually fully behind the shield player, so that no matter where they look, they're dead as can be. No matter which way you look though, it always seems like Ying's Candelas will blind you anyways. That is, at least, if you cook them correctly. You see, as Ying, you only want to cook your Candela fully if you're going for a kill. If not, you're going for room control or space, then you only want to cook your Ying Candela 1 to 2 bar. This gives defenders time to run away, and it gives them some reaction time so that you can take control of what they just ran away from. Now that was just 7 out of 70 different tips that I'll be going over in today's video. But speaking of taking map control, it's very, very important, and it's something that Vigil is great at countering. Vigil's ability allows him to not be seen by drones, and whenever he activates his ability, you see these white lines pop up in the bottom of your screen. But if you sit still and you don't move at all, not only does it make these white lines appear less and less, giving the false sense of security that you're farther away than their drone is, but it also makes it to where you don't make any noise. So they further reinforce that idea in their head that, hey, he's not in this room, maybe he's below, or maybe he's in a different room. This will make your roam game a lot more top tier when you're getting droned out, and it'll make you a lot more sneaky, getting you free kills and free round wins. Now, just like Vigil is great at holding map control, Lion is great at taking it, unless you play him wrong. What a lot of people will do is they'll randomly just scan with Lion's ability 3 times throughout the entire round, but you don't want to actually be doing this. Instead, what you need to be doing as Lion in specific is droning out the roamers first whenever you're roam clearing, and then whenever you go for that kill after you drone, then you want to scan. This makes it to where if they leave, then they're getting pinged because they're in the middle of a scan, so you have information on them. But if they don't leave, well, you just droned them out, so you know exactly where they are anyways. So either way, if they stand still or if they leave, you have exact information that you can use to pre-fire and get a kill on somebody. It's a very, very easy way to roam clear and get free round wins. Another way to get free round wins, though, is by spawn peeking correctly. Spawn peeking correctly can be the difference between dying or living and getting a kill, which can be the difference between winning or losing a round. To show you this, I brought you back onto the top floor of Cafe. Now, if you break open a window just like this, you can get a good spawn peek, sure, but this is really obvious to anyone who's been playing the game for more than 5 minutes. Instead, what you want to do is you want to maintain the glass's integrity on the window, and then shoot a single bullet hole exactly where you think their head will appear on the spawn peek, just like this. Now, this bullet hole will still allow you to see outside pretty clearly, but because of the broken glass, it actually covers up the broken part of the barricade and makes your spawn peek a lot less obvious to anyone suspecting that you might be spawn peeking, which can get you some free kills. It's very, very nice. Something else that can get you free kills, though, is holding longer angles. Now, you commonly see this as zombie setup for top floor Cafe, where you have a barricade here, and you have a barricade right here, and then you prone just like this, holding feet, or stand up like this, crouched, holding anybody dropping the hatch. What a lot of players will do though is they'll play close to this door, and then whenever the zombie barricades are broken, they'll continue to just play off of this door like this, but you don't want to be doing this. Instead, you want to back all the way up and hold an angle, I guess kind of like this, where you could hold the door. Backing up and holding this angle makes you a smaller target, and if you don't know how perspective works in real life and in real games, smaller targets are not only harder to hit, but because they're smaller and farther away, they look faster, which gives you less of a reaction time to shoot them. So if you're ever on an angle, just backing up will win you a lot more gunfights than if you were to be close on this doorway, just like this. Not only can backing up help you hold angles more correctly, but also holding the correct side of the doorway will help you hold angles correctly as well. Now, if I want to hold somebody swinging this door, should I be on the right side of the doorway, or should I be on the left side of the doorway? Now, this is something that I've talked about a lot in my recent videos, but you should be on the right side of the doorway. The reason you want to be on the right whenever you're looking at the left is because let's say someone is swinging me from the left. Well, if I'm on the right side of the doorway, I can choose just exactly how much I peek and how much of them I see, which allows me to control the pace and the flow of the gunfight. Not only this, but if I were to peek from the right side and I see the doorway, they're actually going to be able to see the right portion of my body and my shoulder before I'm able to see them. And because of Swinger's advantage, that is just going to get you killed a lot of the times. It's not worth it. Speaking of a zombie though, you never want to be using a barricade like this, pre-breaking it twice, and then running out. This is really, really bad. Instead, what you want to do is you want to put a barricade on the window, and then if you have something that you're able to vault on top of, do that. What you want to do next is you're immediately going to jump off of whatever you vaulted onto, which will immediately break the zombie barricade, and then you can easily hop outside and get the kill. Now, if you put in a zombie barricade on the window, a lot of attackers will think, well, I can just wait for him to knife it 3 times, and that will give me a sound cue that I can react to. They'll never expect it to just break immediately without that sound cue, so you'll catch a lot of attackers completely by surprise. If you want to prevent runouts though, then using Nomad effectively is very, very important. A lot of people will set up air jabs above doorways or above windows, just like this. Now, this is actually really, really bad. The reason this is bad is because any defender can easily just crouch like this and shoot the air jab before it goes off, allowing them to run out just the same as if there wasn't an air jab there. Instead, what you want to be doing is shooting the air jab much, much higher, so not only can they not see it, but if they want to impact grenade it, they're going to have to impact grenade it. So not only are they not able to see it and shoot it as easily, but they also can't impact grenade it if they throw an impact at the floor. So it's pretty much a fail-safe Nomad air jab. Let's go over Nomad's counterpart though, Gridlock. Now, a lot of people make the mistake of using Gridlock for flanks, which is viable on some maps, but that's not her primary objective. Gridlock's objective is to lock the grid of a site so that you can get a plant down, hence the name Gridlock. So if you use her tracks more on site to make it easier for you to plant and harder for the defenders to rotate, paired up with smoke grenades to get the plant down easier, you will win a lot more games as Gridlock as long as you just get the plant down. But getting the plant down can be very hard if you utilize smoke grenades incorrectly. A lot of people put smoke grenades right on top of themselves whenever they go for a plant, but this is actually really bad. You don't want to be doing this. Instead, you want to put smoke grenades more near the defenders, so they have less room to walk up to you whenever there's a smoke grenade in front of their face. If they walk out of the smoke grenade that's right next to them, they'll get shot. But if there's a smoke grenade right on you, then no one will be able to see them until they get right on you and kill you. So you just never want to be smoking right next to your person. Not only are you using smoke grenades wrong, but you're probably using regular grenades wrong as well. Regular grenades just got reworked, so you can't cook them anymore, but there is a way that you can make them explode faster. If you bounce a grenade on the floor, it actually will explode faster after immediately hitting the floor, kind of like flash grenades. So if you want it to explode a little bit faster, maybe because you're trying to get a kill, just bounce it off of the floor instead of bouncing it off of a wall. But you can easily counter a well-timed grenade with a Wamai, but you can't really do that if all of the discs are in one place. As Wamai, you never want to put your discs in one place. You want to be spreading them out as far as you can from each other, because when a Wamai disc catches a grenade or an explosive in general, when it explodes, it will destroy all of your other utility next to the Wamai magnet. So you need to make sure that your Wamai magnets are as far away from any piece of utility as possible so they don't actually destroy other pieces of utility. Not only can Wamais catch grenades, but they can also catch Capitao bolts. Now, Capitao bolts are pretty powerful in their own right, but a lot of people make the mistake of just using these smoke grenades like smoke grenades instead of using the smoke grenades like one-way smoke grenades. One-way smoke grenades are smoke grenades that are very, very high, and they make it to where if anybody walks in the smoke grenade, they will actually get blind, but they allow the attackers to still see the person because they're not blind. Capitao smoke grenades stick to whatever you shoot them at, so you can shoot them at the ceiling, which I actually recommend you do, because if a defender tries to peek, they will get blind from the smoke just because their head model is next to the smoke, whereas you will still clearly be able to see their legs. But you shouldn't be aiming at their legs, you should be aiming at their head, which brings me into my next point. You need to be consistently aiming head level. Now, this sounds like, duh, obviously aim head level, it's a headshot game, right? But even people like Bolo, Spoit, pro players, hell, even I don't aim head level 100% of the time. So there's always room for improvement no matter how good of a player you are. You always can be aiming head level more and consciously think about where your crosshair placement is at all times. I've talked about that plenty on my channel. Something else that I've talked about on my channel extensively is banning incorrect operators. Now, aside from the really obvious operators that you should not be banning, like bad operators like Tachanka or Thunderbird, whatever it may be, you don't want to be banning operators that aren't banned that can counter the operator you are trying to ban. That was a mouthful. But let me give you an example. If Thatcher was on the board, why would you ever ban Cade? It doesn't make sense, because Thatcher can easily counter Cade. So just bring a Thatcher, don't ban Cade. Instead, you could be banning powerful operators like Azami, Fenrir, Solis, Mira, or any of the above that are good on the map you're trying to play. There are many examples of this, but you actually have to be thinking about counters when you're going for bans instead of just aimlessly banning Cade whenever you get into your ranked game. Now, that was only 21 out of 70 different tips for this video, and these get crazier and crazier as the list goes on, so you need to stick to the end. Because the next mistake that you're making is if you're anchoring, you need to be on cameras. Now, obviously you want to be on cameras in the middle of the round, but a lot of anchors won't be on cameras at the beginning of the round. They won't utilize those outside default cameras. Now, outside default cameras are arguably one of the most powerful and important default cameras in the entire game, because of the fact that the first ones that get broken can give you an immediate tell as to where the attackers spawned, and therefore where the attackers will be pushing. If you know where the attackers will be pushing from, you easily know how to set up and hold the site to counter their rush. You also can tell your roamers, hey, they're pushing here, so now you don't have roamers on the opposite side of the map being completely useless and holding a room that no attackers will be pushing. But in order to do this, you actually need to communicate with your team. Now, communicating with your team is something that's very simple to do, but really nobody does it. Like, I solo queue in Champ all the time, and only half the people, even if it's half, have mics and actually use their microphones. And using your microphones, as scary as it might be for your antisocial ass, is actually a very good thing and can win you a lot of gunfights and win you a lot of games. It's very important in a team-based game, whether it be Siege or any team-based game, so why would it be any different for Siege? Well, it's not. So get a mic, suck it up, and give some comms. Now, giving comms is even easier if you have an operator like Valkyrie. Now, what a lot of people do is they place really, really bad Valkyrie cameras. Valkyrie cameras, like one in a corner of a ceiling, may seem really good, but everyone puts Valkyrie cameras there, so they're just going to get shot. But this Valkyrie camera can get a lot of information, so you might think that it's good anyways. But honestly, I'd rather have a camera that gives a super limited amount of information, kind of like this one, but stays alive the entire round, than a camera that gives a lot of information but doesn't stay alive at all during the round. This is due to the fact that I'm not scared of giving comms, so I can use cameras that don't see much but give audio calls instead to get the same amount of information but keep my camera alive for longer. You want to be doing this as Valkyrie. The same exact thing goes for Zero. Now, Zero is one of the very few attackers that actually has a camera as a gadget for attack. Now, because of this, you need someone who is dedicated to watching those flank cameras, otherwise you're just going to get flanked. Now, usually you can depend on the person who dies to get on these cameras if you're in an elo higher than Plat, but if all of you are alive, then no one is able to watch those cameras, which will let people flank you with ease. So as Zero, a good tip is if everyone is alive on your team, you need to be the one on your cameras, because 9 times out of 10, you just cannot rely on your teammates to do it for you. Another thing that you cannot rely on your team for doing is shooting drones in the prep phase. I have absolutely zero idea why my teammates just have such a hard time looking and shooting at drones. It's as if their aim suddenly becomes the worst player out of anybody in their entire ranked pool. Simultaneously, they also become blind to drones. I don't know how it happens, but I end up having to play Solis and clean up 5 drones in the prep phase every single round because my teammates, as soon as the prep phase starts, become incompetent apes. You cannot trust your teammates. This has already been established, so you need to be the one looking for drones because chances are you're in an elo where teammates know how to set up site, so just let them handle it. Someone who's really good at doing this in specific, though, is Mozzie. Now, I see a lot of people using Mozzie and putting his pests down in the prep phase on site. You never want to be doing this. If information denial mattered that much to you, then you would just play Mute. Mute is a much better version of Mozzie when it comes to information denial. But you may be doing this so that you can get cameras easily in the prep phase. But if you wanted 3 cameras, just play Valkyrie. She's better than Mozzie in that aspect. But if you want movable cameras, well, play Echo. Echo's better in that aspect. So what would you use Mozzie for? Well, Mozzie, you actually want to be shooting drones in the prep phase and saving your pests on the roam so that they can't drone you whenever they're trying to roam clear you. This is the best, most versatile, and efficient way of using Mozzie properly to get the most value out of his uniqueness as an operator. Another operator that is super unique is Fenrir, but I see a lot of Fenrir players not using him to his fullest potential. Now, Fenrir is a very powerful operator, but only if you swing off of his Fenrir mines and never swing if there's not one going off. Fenrir is meant to be an anchor. He sits on site, and because he only has a 1x scope and not a reliable secondary you can use for gunfights, you don't want to ever be aggressively swinging. But he makes up for this with his gadget, so you only ever, as Fenrir, want to be swinging an enemy if you know that they are blind and deafed by your gadget. That is it. You never want to swing anywhere else because, again, it's hard for you as an operator to take gunfights in the first place. Someone who can easily take gunfights, though, is Iana. Now, Iana is really good because her ability allows her to have seemingly infinite information. This also means that in the prep phase, you can kind of get away with just running your drone into sight. But I see a lot of Iana players just sitting on their drone in the prep phase because they're too busy on TikTok on their phone. Instead, use your drone, throw it into sight, get as much information on the site setup as possible, even if it gets the drone killed, because again, your clone kind of provides the information that you need. If maybe you want to save your drone though, get the drone in the building and set up a cutoff camera or a camera in general that your teammates can use for information. You never just want to be sitting on your cameras as a Iana player. Not only is setting pre-placed cameras so good for Iana, but it's also good for any fast-paced operator like Ashe. With Ashe, if you have a camera set up in the place that you are rushing, that you put there in the prep phase, you can get on that camera right before you rush and immediately go in with your Ashe charge. This will get you a lot of free kills, and it'll also stop any roamers or people in rat spots from being able to kill you as easily. Another thing you're doing wrong as Ashe when you rush is just putting your breaching charge in the middle of the barricade and running into it. Now, as you can see, this cost me about 40 health. Ashe is a 3-speed 1 armor, which means she doesn't have a lot of health in the first place. So if you want to do this but maintain all of your health, shoot your breaching charge in the top left, top right, or bottom left of the barricade to make sure the explosion does minimal damage to you when you're rushing. As you can see, I took 0 damage there. Someone who's great at stopping Ashe rushes though is Kapkan. Now, the mistake that I see a lot of players making is they'll put Kapkan traps on doors just like this. You don't want to be doing this. Instead, before you put your Kapkan traps down, you actually want to barricade whatever you're putting the Kapkan traps down on. Not only does this reduce the sound that you make whenever you put the traps down, but also whenever you remove the barricade just like this, as you can see, there's a bit of film and access barricade on the side of the doorways. Now this is actually pretty thick, and it will cover a huge majority of your Kapkan traps that wouldn't otherwise be covered if you didn't have this leftover barricade on the doorway, which can be the difference between someone seeing or hitting your Kapkan traps. Not only should you be doing that as Kapkan, but as Kapkan, you should never have all 5 of your Kapkan traps on different doorways. Now, there's 2 ways of playing Kapkan. You can either do that, or you can put 2 to 3 Kapkan traps on one doorway, and then 2 to 3 on a different doorway. The reason that you want to be putting 3 and 2 on one doorway instead of 1 on multiple doorways is because the first style of playing Kapkan is used for information based off of the explosions. But if you wanted a trap that provided information, you should just go play Lesion, because Lesion does that better. With Kapkan though, he's special because he's able to get insta-downs or in some cases insta-kills with his traps. So stacking your Kapkan traps to maximize his uniqueness is what you want to be doing as Kapkan specifically. Speaking of Lesion though, one mistake that I see Lesion players making is they're still putting Lesion mines in front of the door. Now this would have worked years ago when his mines were invisible, but they're not anymore. Instead, you want to be putting them on the side of doorways, just like this. Now you may be thinking, well, that's going to be really hard for them to hit. But as you can see when I put the trap down, there's a huge radius of effect. They added this in with the new Legion update. This radius of effect essentially says, hey, if anyone steps in this radius, they will still get hit by the goo mine, no matter if they're stepping directly on it or not. So if you put a goo mine on a doorway just like this, that radius, as you can see, covers up to half of the doorway. So no matter how they walk in through the doorway, they're guaranteed to hit this trap, and this trap is way more hidden than one that's just in the middle of the doorway like that. Someone who's easily able to counter Legion though is IQ. Now, a lot of players, when they get the bomb down with IQ, will stay on the bomb site and try to clean up kills with their 1.5 times scope, but you don't want to be doing this. If you didn't know, you can actually use the scanner below the diffuser to see if any defenders are trying to disable your diffuser. This will allow you to get your pistol out and shoot them through the floor, which in turn will allow you to win the round, as opposed to you taking a risky gunfight that could lose you the round. Something else that could lose you the round though is droning improperly. Now I see a lot of players doing this in solo queue lobbies. Droning improperly is bad because it makes it to where you're not maximizing the amount of information that you could be whenever you're getting your drone in the building. If you're just, again, driving your drone straight into the site, you're just going to waste a drone. A good rule of thumb that I like to use is try to make every single drone one kill. If you're going for a roam clear, you can use that drone to roam clear and then get a kill. Your second drone can then be used for a site execute to then get a kill and get the bomb down or win the round. Either way, try to make every single drone you have into a kill, obviously disregarding the droning operators like Brava, Twitch, and Flores, and just try to make your regular drones a kill instead. Something else that can also get you free kills though is peeking deployable shields correctly. You never want to be peeking a deployable shield from the top, you only want to peek it from the left or the right side. This is because leaning to the left and leaning to the right is a much faster movement, and they can't predict it as easily. Not only this, but if you peek up to down, they can see you doing it because it's a slower movement, which will allow them to way easier telegraph where you're going to pop out, making them easier to pre-fire you and getting you a lost gunfight in the process. So with deployable shields, you want to be peeking the left and right side mostly, never up and down. Same goes for OSA on attack. Speaking of OSA though, I want to talk about something that I see tons of players doing, which is that they're using OSA more like a shield operator and less like an attacker with deployable shields. What do I mean by this? Well, as OSA, I see people playing them like Blitz. They'll run in with the shield in front of their face and they'll have their teammates play off of them holding up a shield. Instead, what you want to be doing as OSA is you want to find a place that you know defenders like holding angles from and put down your shield. Then break open whatever wall or barricade is separating that angle from being closed or open and sit behind your deployed shield. Your OSA shields should be deployed way more often than they should be in front of your face. Almost practically, your shields should never really be in front of your face ever, unless you're using it to break a barricade. Utilizing barricades in general though can be the difference between you dying or living. Whenever you run out of a barricade, you never want to break the barricade like this when you're prepping the run out. This is due to the fact that it makes a lot of noise that the attackers can easily hear and easily react to hold your angle. Instead, what you want to do, especially if you have a loud gun, is break the bottom part of the barricade just like that. Then you can melee this little strip of the barricade right here, which in the game will still act like you're meleeing the bottom part of the barricade. And as you can see right there below my crosshair, I have a vault prompt, so now I can vault out of the window, even though I didn't break the bottom of the barricade with my fist 2 times. I just broke this little sliver right here. This makes way less noise, and it makes it to where you can easily hop out and get a kill without them knowing, which again can be the difference between you getting a kill and you being the guy that got killed. Something that can easily counter running out though is claymores. Now, you place claymores wrong. Whenever you place a claymore for a flank, I bet you probably place it like that. Now you might be thinking, what's wrong with this claymore? They can't even see it until they actually pass the lasers. Well, the issue with it is that they know that the claymore is there in the first place. If you place it correctly, they should never know your claymore's there. What you want to do instead of just facing it... Oh shit. What you want to do instead of just facing it outward like that is you want to actually point it at the thing that you're hiding it behind. So in this case, it's the pillar. Now you might be thinking that the lasers aren't going to point out, but this one laser does point out, and all it takes for the claymore to explode is one laser. Now this is going to be red for most enemies because of the settings that they have on in their accessibility menu. So that blended in with the red stairs is a lot harder to see than a claymore with all 3 prongs sticking out like this. That's way more obvious. And even if you don't think that this is too hidden, you can put another claymore behind it just like this. Now, that claymore will actually cover all 3 prongs, so when they go and they shoot this claymore thinking that they're good, they'll die to this one because they're just moving too fast. So you can guarantee get a claymore kill on the flank if you do exactly what I just told you. Now, so far, that's 40 things that you're doing wrong still in Rainbow Six Siege, and we still have 30 more to go. You've got some work to do, bro. Speaking of work to do, my next tip is that you don't have a warm-up routine. Do you ever go into an arcade before a ranked match and you're super good in the warm-up, and then you get into a game and you're just not good at all? Well, that's honestly because you just didn't warm up enough. I used to have this problem. I know that's a super relatable problem to have, and you can easily solve it by having a set warm-up routine that you do every single day that is tailor-made for your problems that you're trying to improve. But your mechanics are not the only issue that you have to fix, which brings me to my next point. A lot of people just blame their mechanics for the reason that they're not ranking up instead of actually solving the underlying issues like positioning, game sense, map knowledge, team coordination, and things of that nature. Most people, especially in the ranks of like Plat and Emerald, will just say, oh, that guy had better mechanics than me, or oh, if I had my flicking up, or if I had, you know, Bolo's mechanics, then I would have won that gunfight. But that's actually not even that true. If you had Bolo's mechanics and you're hard stuck Plat, you'd get to like Emerald and you would not hit champ, because Bolo is a lot more than just mechanics. He has positioning, game sense, and he's overall a great player. So there are more things that you can improve than just your mechanics, and using your mechanics as an excuse to not improve those hard to improve things is actually holding you back more than your mechanics ever could. Not only can blaming your mechanics shift the blame onto something that you don't even need to improve, but so can blaming your teammates. I know all about having teammates that are just terrible at the game. But let's bring up Bolo again. Do you think that him having bad teammates would ever stop him from hitting champ every season or becoming a pro? Absolutely not, because he's so good that he can solo carry. And if you're not so good that you can solo carry, then obviously you still have things that you can improve on. So why would you waste time blaming your teammates? Instead, you could just be trying to improve yourself. That's the only thing that you can actually do to make a difference. So never blame your teammates. But you never even have to worry about blaming your teammates if you play with a consistent and good 5-stack. Now, 5-stacking is something that I talk about so often because it literally can be the difference between you getting the highest rank in the game and you being hard stuck gold. Whenever you queue up against a team where all of them have the same clan tag, or you're on tracker and you just see that they're stacked, you immediately get a little scared and a little defensive, because you know inherently in your mind, whether you want to admit it or not, that stacking helps. You get guaranteed comms and a bunch of advantages that you would never get if you were a solo queue player. Something that 5-stacking allows you to do as well is it allows you to play whatever operator you want. Now, the mistake that I see a lot of players making is they'll do the thing where they play every single operator and they'll try to tailor make their operator based off of what the team needs. Now, this might sound like a great idea, but honestly, I would recommend that you get a main operator or at least a main role and just stick to it. Now, I know every other content creator in the community is going to hate me for saying this because it's a team-based game and you have to adapt to what your enemies are doing and you gotta play these operators strategy game. Who cares, bro? If you play Ace every round and you play a zombie every round, you're gonna be fine. You're gonna be more than fine, actually. If you're a Fenrir or Thatcher main, if you're a Thermite main, hell, even if you're a Warden or Ashe main and you're getting value, it doesn't matter who you play. I would honestly just recommend that you start maining somebody. One thing that I guarantee that you make the mistake of doing, though, is using incorrect rotates. The only time that you ever want a rotate that is able to be sprinted through is if you know for a fact it's going to be very difficult or nearly impossible for the attackers to get it. A great example would be Kitchen on Coastline. The attackers almost never get control of that rotate. But if you know they're going to get control of it, then make it crouchable, because making it crouchable if they use that rotate will make them have to slow down and give you a large sound cue, which allows you to better react to their rotation. The only time you want to be using a vaultable rotate is if you want to be using the bottom portion of the wall that isn't broken as cover so that you can peek the head holes that are initially made when you make the vaultable rotate. Also, making a vaultable rotate that is off or near sight allows you as a Frost player to put Frost traps underneath it, so it can be good if you're playing Frost too. Speaking of Frost though, one mistake that I see a lot of players making with Frost is they put their traps in way too obvious locations. You don't want to be putting them next to doors or under windows. Instead, you only want to be putting them in locations where you know they're going to have to vault. Like I said earlier, vaultable rotates, or desks, or chairs, or places that you know they commonly will vault in order to get to you. even if you're putting them in non-specific scenarios, people will still be good enough to shoot them. So what you want to do as well is play off of the frost mats. The reason you want to play off of your frost mats is because the higher elo you go, the more your frost mats will get shot. But even the sound cue of someone shooting your frost mats is information. So with you and your shield, you can easily swing off of that information to get free kills if you're using your frost mats more as bait to get those kills. Now, the only other trap operator we haven't gone over is Thorn. Now, with Thorn, a lot of people will put their Thorn traps on doorways or windows like that, but I don't recommend you do this at all because they're just going to get easily shot. Instead, what you can do if you know they're going to run into a very tight room like this is you can break open the floorboards just like this. Breaking open the floorboards and putting a thorn trap inside of the floor will allow you to be able to hide your thorn trap effectively, and the indicator from the trap will also confuse any attackers because they won't be able to find it, and it will still get you a pretty free kill. The only issue that I see with Thorn specifically, though, is that a lot of people will bring barbed wire to hide her traps with. Now, this is good-spirited, but every single time you honestly want to be bringing that deployable shield if your team doesn't already have 1 to 2 available. Deployable shields are so powerful, we've talked about this already, so sacrificing that to get a trap kill that you may not even get in the first place is just so irresponsible, and it's not even a good idea. Speaking of deployable shields though, there's one more tip with a deployable shield that I just need to make sure you're not making the mistake of doing. I know, we keep talking about deployable shields, but bear with me. Pretend that you put a deployable shield on, let's say, this door, or any door for that matter. I don't know why you do it on this door, but you just pretend, right? You put it on this door. You never, ever want to put deployable shields flush with a door like this. Ever. You never want to do it. The reason you don't want to do it is, let's say I do put it on the door just like this. Well, now if I want to rotate through this door, I have to vault, which leaves me exposed and locked in an animation, but it also makes a bunch of sound. Also, if I have a deployable shield and I want ADSs in front of it, I couldn't do that because I'd have to put it on the floor here, which would be exposed to the doorway. Instead, get your deployable shield and back it up to about right here. What this allows is the ADSs to sit behind the wall, where it can't get shot, but also now you're able to rotate with this door completely freely. This also opens up new angles. Now I can peek the left side of it and hold the doorway. Now I can peek the right side of it and hold the doorway. Backing up your shield from any doorway is going to be your best friend. You never want to have your deployable shields flush with any doorway whatsoever. Speaking of doorways, when do you want to keep a doorway open and when do you want to barricade it just like this? To show you, I've brought you onto the basement site, where there's a very common barricade on this double door for laundry just like this. Now, the reason people barricade this doorway specifically is because if they take control of this doorway sneakily, they get a lot of long angles through the head holes here, the hallway here, and the head holes here. So this barricade serves as a piece of information, because anybody on site will be able to hear them breaking the barricade if they want to get these angles. So to answer the question, when do you use barricades, you only want to be using them if you need the information from the barricade. You never really want to use them as cover. This is because if your roamers want to come back to site, you don't want to have to make them break a barricade, which will inherently waste time and get them killed in a lot of scenarios. The same exact rule applies for castle barricades. Castle barricades are even harder to get down. It takes more time to get them down with a crowbar, and it takes more than 3 punches, 9 specifically, to break the barricade if you want to do that instead. You never, ever, unless you have a pro league strat in mind that all of your teammates are okay with, want to be barricading doorways with a castle barricade to site. It limits your roamers, it gives attackers covers that they can use to push the site, and overall is just never a good idea. The same can be said for a zombie barricade. Using a zombie barricade to block random doors off that the attackers can easily knife is a terrible idea, and given that a zombie only has 5 barricades that have a recharge time, this is a waste of a barricade. You never ever want to be doing this. The only time you should be ever using a zombie barricades is to make deployable shields for sight or to cover up vert. You don't even want to be using a zombie barricades to cover up walls either, while we're on that note, because they can easily just sit on the wall and destroy the barricade. It never makes sense to knife a zombie barricades if they can easily just knife it back. Doesn't make sense. Something else that doesn't make sense, but a lot of people do, is crouching mid-gunfight. Now, this is really bad the lower in the ranks that you are, because lower in the ranks, people don't have the good habit of aiming head level, which we talked about earlier being crucially important. If you crouch, you're just going to crouch into somebody's bullets that are just naturally aimed crouch level because they're just bad at the game. Now in higher elo, you don't necessarily have to worry about this, but even then it's still a bad idea because you crouching makes your hitbox a lot easier to hit due to the fact that all of your mass as an operator is concentrated into one point. Not only this, but crouching makes a noise, so then know that you'll be crouched, and crouching is also slower when you want to move, so you're going to be even slower taking a gunfight, which is already putting you at a disadvantage. If you thought crouching was bad, then you should never ever be proning. Proning is even worse. It makes even more noise, it limits your movement even more, it even lowers your sensitivity, and it exposes you even more than crouching does. You should only ever be proning if it gives you an ankle like it does in the rafters of Clubhouse for this example on screen. That is the only time you should ever prone. Never ever prone beyond this. It does not make sense. One of arguably the most important mistakes that you could be making though is not subscribing to this channel. I mean, what are you doing, dude? I post banger videos like these 7 days a week. Jokes aside though, my next tip is going to be having the correct settings. A lot of players like to have their HUD maximized, but you never ever want to have your HUD maximized. If anything, you want to turn down your HUD scaling to the minimum amount required. I play on minimum HUD all the time, as you can see by this gameplay. I barely have a HUD. This is gonna get really weird at first, but it'll stop blocking a lot of the things that are on your screen, and that can inherently get you a kill or make you be the person that gets killed. It's just really nice to have, and you'll get very used to it very quickly. Another important setting that you probably have wrong is you have on hi-fi instead of night mode for your audio settings. Now, hi-fi, yes, actually does make the sound quality better, and it makes things louder, but what it does also do is it makes explosions louder, it makes gunfire louder, and it actually makes footsteps quieter, if you didn't know. Night mode, on the other hand, does the exact opposite. You get less sound quality, but you're able to hear footsteps and players and reloading animations a lot more, and you're able to hear explosions and gunfire a lot less. I don't know about you, but I don't need to hear explosions at 1000 decibels in my ear, but I would love to hear footsteps across the map, so night mode is just for me. The final setting that I'll be talking about in this video though is having your display settings on 16:9. Now, I have my display settings on 16:9 in custom game footage for YouTube videos just because most players are on it, but you don't want to be on it. 16:9 is terrible to play pretty much any FPS game on. Having at least a little bit widescreen stretched res is good because it allows you to see the shoulders and legs of players a lot easier and faster, which can allow you to get a lot of kills. Also, if you're using a one-time scope, it actually zooms the one-time scope out a little bit because you are staring at wider glass, so it honestly makes it easier to use one-time scopes as well. Now, having on the correct settings is crucial to winning more games, but also having on the right attachments is even more important. Now, if you're on console, you want to be pretty much equipping compensator to anything that you see, other than DMRs, pistols, shotguns, or anything with a lot of vertical kick with not a lot of horizontal kick. For PC, it's the exact opposite. You never want to use compensator unless it's on an LMG or Ella's Scorpion. You always want to have on flash hider, because for us, it's a lot easier to control that horizontal recoil. Now, there are certain weapons that have no recoil. Then you want to be putting on extended barrel if it has a low fire rate, or silencer if it has a high fire rate. Either way, does not really matter. You just want to make sure that you have those attachments on. Another attachment that you definitely should have on that you don't have on, I guarantee, is the laser. Now, lasers are bad on any automatic weapons, but on shotguns specifically, they're actually very good. Now, as you can see on my shotgun, I have the laser equipped. If you didn't know, having a laser on your shotgun when you're ADS actually makes the choke of your shotgun less. It's not just for hip firing, I promise you. As you can see here, that is an entire mag from the SAS shotgun with the laser equipped, as you can see on the wall right there. There we go. Now, if I were to take this laser off and go straight back into the game, as you can see on this wall right here, I don't have the laser, and I were to ADS and shoot the exact same way, as you can tell, that circle is much wider and the choke of this is much thinner. So even when you're ADS'd, specifically only with shotguns, the laser will actually help your choke. So always when you have shotguns, equip the laser. It just is better. Now, if you're running any other weapon though, you actually want to never run the laser. Because like I said, the laser only affects the choke of the bullet spread if you're on a shotgun. So running it, while it does decrease the hip fire bloom, also gives an exact indicator to the enemies where you're sitting or if you're looking at their doorway, because they can see the bright big red laser right next to where you're aiming. So having it on only shotguns is the move. You never ever want to have it on any automatic weapon, DMR, or pistol in the entire game. Speaking of lasers though, let's go over Alibi's laser hologram. Now, what I see a lot of Alibi players doing is they'll put the clone just randomly in the building, and this isn't good because they can easily just shoot the feet of the clone, and now it's completely useless. As Alibi, you need to make sure when you're placing her clones down that the feet of her clones are hidden behind some sort of wall, barricade, or piece of cover. It doesn't matter. Just make sure that you're hiding and protecting the feet of that Alibi clone as much as humanly possible. Speaking of operator clone, let's go over Yana's clone. Now, Yana's clone actually has a longer cooldown period if the clone gets shot, as opposed to if you manually deactivate it. So, if you're cloning in and you hear that someone is near, don't face check them with the clone, or else you're not going to get your clone back for a long while. You actually want to deactivate the clone manually, even if you didn't get an exact confirmation and an exact ping on where the enemy was. You know who's great at getting an exact confirmation on information though? Dokkaebi. Now, Dokkaebi, her ability, if you don't know, when you call people, actually kicks everybody, even including dead people, off of cameras. What I see a lot of people doing is whenever they try to hack the phones, though, to get all the default cameras on defense, is they'll just go run towards the phone. And in the process, because usually roamers stick together, they'll end up dying. What you want to do is call once. That one call should get you or your team a free kill. Then you want to immediately call again. That way, if there's any other roamers that are near the phone you're about to hack, you can immediately know and get the kill instead of you dying to a random rat in a corner. This got me killed a lot before I realized it, and it doesn't even matter if you waste both calls on the roam anyways, because you're not going to be using her calls if you're not on the roam in the first place. So I would just use both when you try to hack a phone. Now, Dokkaebi's really cool because, like I said, you can hack cameras, but as an attacker and as Dokkaebi specifically, you don't want to be on your cameras for too long. I see this all the time. You have a support player who does nothing but drone his team in, or you have somebody that plays nothing but Brava, Flores, or Dokkaebi that are on nothing but drones and cams the entire round. And then every single time, because they're not actually helping their team dies, and they're left in a 1vx situation and they lose the round. There is good information, but there's a time to get that good information, and it's not every single point in the round. You only want to be droning if you're droning your teammates in for a rush, or if you are up in man count and you need to slow the pace down so that you don't get refragged. Those are the only two places that you should be droning. That's it. Now, the same can be said for defense. You don't want to be on cameras, default cameras specifically, for way too long. As an anchorer, it's a bit more excusable, like I said in the early part of my video. But even then, if you have roamers who are dead, get off cams. They can be on cams. You don't need to be on cams at all. You should be holding angles, applying pressure to even waste more time like the roamers try to do. Use utility. Give callouts to your teammates, help your teammates, whatever you may do, there's always something that you can be doing instead of just being on default cameras that your dead teammates could be on instead. Now, the 69th mistake that you get wrong is that you get way too tilted if you lose rounds. Guys, I know every single one of you watching this video has at some point in your Siege career come back from an 0-3 loss. Every single one of you. I have too. It's very common. Now, why would these rounds in specific be any different? Well, the answer is that they're not. If you could come back then, you can come back now. It doesn't even matter if you're facing a cheater or you're facing the best aimer in the world. There's always a way that you can outplay your enemy. So never lose hope. You losing hope and running in with a Maru because you're tilted that you lost 2 rounds in a row can be the actual nail in the coffin that seals your fate, much less the 2 rounds that you lost beforehand. And the final mistake that every single person watching this video makes, that I just guarantee you're making this mistake, is not watching the next video. My name's Alka, and I'll see you there. Later.